bots and automated threats are evolving faster than any of us could have expected. And APIs in particular have become a prime target because they're often less protected than web front ends.
So I would say good versus bad is no longer about like how traffic is looking, but it's about what the automation is trying to do.
We're seeing bots that just don't follow the script anymore. They're adjusting their behavior in real time based on how your platform responds. Like, don't just defend the technology, defend the intent.
My name is Rida, Rashid. Currently, I'm leading the Offensive Security and DevSecOps program at Sobeys and have experience in pen testing, offensive security, incident response, and compliance side. Looking forward to exchanging real-world tactics with everyone today. Thank you.
Awesome. I'll go next. So my name's Rachel. My background is in all things cybersecurity operations. So I started in cyber threat intelligence, loved that work, and then I'm now the senior manager for the cyber incident response team within the telecommunications sector. On the side, I also run Emerging Leaders Can Hack with siberX, which is a hackathon to get new grads, students, etc. Some exposure and hands-on experience actually in cybersecurity operations. So very excited to dive into these topics with these lovely ladies. Over to you, Eloise.
Thank you. I'm Eloise Taylor. I am SecOps manager at Jobber. I'm fortunate enough to lead and work alongside some of the smartest people in the industry across security operations and trust operations there. Over the last few years, I've worked closely on challenges around bot mitigation, API security, and automation-driven threats. And I've seen firsthand how quickly this space is evolving. Really excited to be part of this conversation today and share ideas around where we go next as defenders.
Amazing. All right, so we have a few questions to kind of kick us off, and as we're going, if folks that are listening in have additional questions or things, you can always send them in. We'll try to get to them, and if not, you can send us those questions directly after the panel wraps if we run out of time or anything like that. Okay, so to kick us off, the first question that we're going to go sort of round table on is what are some of the most common types of bot or script-based attacks against APIs or automation platforms today? And then how have you guys seen those types of threats evolve in the past year? So maybe Eloise, we'll start with you if you're good with that. Perfect. So over to you, and we can all kind of chime in after.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one thing I keep hearing, whether it's from peers, industry reports, or just swapping war stories over coffee as we do, is that bots and automated threats are evolving faster than any of us could have expected. It's not just about basic attacks anymore. Across industries, like people are seeing bots that are quieter, they're smarter, and just better at blending in. And APIs in particular have become a prime target because they're often less protected than web front ends. If you saw the latest bad bot report, bots now make up more than half of all internet traffic, and 44% of advanced bot technology is targeting APIs specifically. That's a huge shift that's forcing us and our teams to kind of rethink our traditional security models. It was wild to me to read that stat this week that like the first time in a decade, automated traffic has surpassed human activity. Also, credential stuffing, that that continues to be a top threat across the board, especially at login APIs. What's interesting is how much more disciplined these attacks have become. Instead of the noisy spray and pray approach, attackers are being smarter and mimicking real users to stay under the radar. Overall the trend's clear. Bots aren't just attacking your perimeter anymore. They're embedding themselves deeper into legitimate workflows. They're being patient. They're exploiting rules and APIs in ways that are much more difficult to catch with traditional defenses. And it's a whole new game, and us defenders are having to adjust quickly.
Awesome. Rida, did you have comments or anything on that?
Thanks for sharing the insight, Eloise. I would say the same thing. I think that if we see that in the last couple of months, it's like the share of the non-human traffic against these APIs jumped, like I would say over 50%. And so the growing share of the APIs is because it's fully automated. And the first, I would say the evergreen favorite is also credential stuffing and account takeovers. So bots actually replaying billions of stolen username and password pairs until it fits one. So because the bots are actually rotating using the residential and mobile IP pools, then it's becoming much harder to identify them, and to seeing them, it's going to have a genuine traffic because it's getting very distinguishable from the real traffic. So again, the second one I would say is for the business logic one, like they are actually trying to abuse the business logic. So they are not only exploiting the bugs, but also walking through the normal flows. Like, in the retail, if we see, add to cart or apply promo, it's actually working faster than any human. So because the thing is, because of the new AI tools like AutoGPT, they are mapping out APIs and adopting when it's blocked. So they are very using the right way, I would say, using the AI for getting their abuse. So it's actually the third one we see a lot. I was actually reading also, it's API layer on the DDoS, which is causing the cost implication. So instead of flooding the bandwidth, bots are actually hitting the high cost APIs. So the goal is to exhaust CPUs and slow services. So they have causing a lot of harm. The last one seeing also is more LLM abuse and prompt injection one. So the attackers are actually tricking the chatbots or AI assistants and into the leaking tokens. So I would say the key trends are, bots can now also read the codes and auto adjust based on the browser's input. So I would say they are quiet but fast and adaptive, and they don't even brute force, but they actually blend in. So we need to defend against more smarter tools. Thank you.
Yeah, I completely agree with both of you, and I'm trying to think what else can I add to this answer, because you both spoken so well. I think when I'm consulting on this topic of what is the actual attack scenario and how do you sort of defend against the threat of today, let's say, or how is this evolving over the past year? The first question you have to be able to answer as a CISO or a security expert in a specific company is what is it that the threat actor is actually after, right? So are you in a company where you have your customer facing directly, right? And you have some sort of e-commerce portal or something like that is entirely, API driven, partially API driven. Perhaps like Rida was saying, there's chat boxes that are being leveraged that can be utilized against you. So, that could be one example of, if that's the case, the threat actor is most likely, what is it that they could actually grab from your website? What's the end game for that threat actor? It's customer information, right? They want to sort of break in, grab as many details as they can about your customers so that they can then go and exploit those customers or, go after you as the company and embarrass you, let's say, or extort you into paying some sort of ransom, right? Totally different if you're coming from, let's say, the perspective of a B2B company or maybe even public sector. It's not that you're necessarily customer facing, but in the B2B example, perhaps by getting into your network, the threat actor then has access to another network, and you just become this like launch pad for them, right? So are there APIs that are protecting your 2FA? Or other kind of mechanisms, APIs that are behind your biggest security controls that have flaws in them that can be exploited, right? So completely agree with what Eloise and Rida have been sharing. I think putting it into the context of the sector you're in and what exactly is it that the threat actor is after will kind of give you that roadmap on what it is that you need to start with when it comes to protecting yourself from an API perspective. All right, so moving on to the next question here, and I am very curious what you guys think about this one. We hear a lot about these good bots separating good traffic from bad traffic, and this is especially hard, in the context of bots. They can look very similar in your logs and for your tools. So what makes it, difficult to actually separate good bots from bad bots? What have you seen that's, worked? Anything you could kind of provide on that? And maybe this time we'll start with you, Rida.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. So I would say, like, with going for the problem statement is like all of the organization relying on some automation. We have search engine crawlers, we have monitors, we have accessibility tools. So attackers know this and they actually try to hide inside the same kind of traffic patterns. So the task hour is like difficult, which is, we need to keep the helpful bots online and block those which are the harmful ones. So without, stopping our businesses. I would say there can be a few technical reasons that it can be hard. Like, first of all, it's actually obvious one is identity spoofing. So it looks like attacker is actually using the user agents and rotating through their residential proxy IPs. So the log entries may be claimed to be a Google bot, but may actually run credential stuffing. And the second is like more like human-like behavior. You have your plugins for your favorite, I would say, playwright or puppeteer. You adding the realistic mouse moves and the scrolling speed also and the key timing. So the thing is the basic CAPTCHA or the JavaScript's integrity checks no longer separate from human. And I would say these are the key things that we are actually seeing it. And I would say the controls that we can do is more likely, like we can have multi-factor bot validation. You are going to use the multiple signals, try to see, the user agent strings or, any CIDR or any signal token you issue. You have only to verify crawlers. Use also TLS or GA3 fingerprinting as well. Besides those, so I would say good versus bad is no longer about like how traffic is looking, but it's about what the automation is trying to do.
Makes sense. Eloise?
Yeah, I'm completely aligned with everything you just said there, Rida. The big challenge between good and malicious, like you said, it isn't clear. It's not just about obvious bad actors hammering your systems. Sometimes, like you said, bots are technically authorized, like your search engine crawlers or your partner integrations, and they behave in a way that strain your APIs or open up new risks. And yeah, the attackers know this. They intentionally design malicious bots to look like those legitimate ones. And I think to add another layer onto that, another reason it's difficult is that good bot behavior can change over time. A partner integration that was harmless a year ago might start aggressively pulling data after a business model shift, but the traffic still looks familiar, so it flies under the radar. And a lot of those kind of more traditional bot detection tools, they were originally built around simple signatures. matching known IPs, user agent strings, and attackers are just way better at rotating these now and blending in, and just adapting faster than the static detection methods can keep up. I feel like at the end of the day, identifying bots isn't just a technical problem, it's a context problem. You have to understand not just what the traffic looks like, but why is it happening, what patterns it follows, and whether it aligns with legitimate use of your APIs. And that's a much harder puzzle to solve, like especially at scale, at org-wide scale.
Yeah, I completely agree. You know, I feel like when I've gone and talked to like smaller companies, sometimes the threat intel team, the hunting team, the incident response team, they know the network like inside and out, and they, you know, with a certain degree of confidence can look at a type of bot traffic and say, yeah, that's this application, that's that application, that's expected, that happens every day, like every day at this time for this volume, blah, blah, blah. But you hit it on the head with there where you're saying like at scale, how do you really do that? And it's not possible, right? So in terms of, you know, how would you really determine good traffic from bad traffic in a, you know, proactive hunting scenario or in terms of detections and tuning? I think it's important to, you know, when you're onboarding some sort of application or some sort of good bot that you know is going to facilitate traffic within your network, what are all of the attributes of that good behavior that you can sort of alert on, right? So how can you bake that into a detection? And then also, you know, just because the activity is following all of those attributes of that good detection and it's, you know, passing all the check marks, you still want to alert on it. Not necessarily that it's something that would go to your incident response team as it's an incident to contain because it's seemingly normal traffic, but you know, it's an alert that could potentially go to your threat hunting team. And that's where, you know, having a human analyst review and look at anomalous traffic over time and say, yeah, like this is the IP we expect it from, and this is the user that we expect it from, and this is the asset we expect it from. However, is somewhat off and anomalous about this activity, and they can go back and you know, confirm and do additional follow-up there. So I think this problem of good versus bad bot traffic, to me, it's just emphasis of the need for a threat hunting team to be more proactive and not just respond to incidents, but to respond to weirdness in your network and double check that you know, everything is working as expected. All right, a couple more questions and then we'll get to the Q&A. I love this question that's coming up. So misconfigured APIs are low-hanging fruit for bad actors. We know this. There have been countless companies at this point that have publicly come out and said, yes, the way that we were kind of infiltrated or you know, exploited was because of some sort of bad or misconfigured API. And we see the reports on this year after year. What are some common API misconfigurations that you guys have seen in the wild, and what kind of exposure do they lead to? So we'll start with Rida, and then I'll chime in after.
Thank you, Rachel. I would say it matters because APIs are actually now kind of like power our mobile apps, our customers' portals, our partner integration, so everything. But when the APIs are not configured properly, they're left open without proper authentications and no such rate limiting, or have weak controls. The attackers even don't need to even hack. They can just use the exposed route as it is and steal the data or money. So a few common API configuration that actually I have seen during you know, in incident response as well as in the pen testing, and the major one is actually there is no such authentication or like the broken authentication. Like some of the APIs are requesting requests, accepting the request without even verifying who is sending them. So attackers can fetch the sensitive data, and they are going to impersonate your users and trigger the admin action. The second most important is wildcard course. It's like the APIs is actually allowing requests from the any domain. So malicious site actually can silently, calls on the behalf of the logged in user and leaking the session data. If we have kind of like no rate limits, that's the big one. The system is allowing unlimited requests, and the bot can flood endpoints and brute force credentials as well. One more is like over permissive API keys, like, some of the mobile or partner API keys, they are actually allowing read and write access. So when only read is needed. So if you have the key leaks, attackers can modify records, not just read them. So I would say is like the key takeaway for this is not fixing just these misconfigurations, but also, if we have enforcing proper controls like, scope tokens as well, we monitor the changes, we are cleaning up our old API regularly, then we can stay ahead. Thank you.
Completely agree. A few other ones that I'll add to the mix. So we've talked about 2FA bypass, misconfigurations. We've talked, of course, about information disclosure misconfigurations. Some of the other ones that are less sexy are, people who, or companies that have legacy APIs, right? So they've built new sites or new applications, new whatever, and they've built new APIs on top of those that are internet facing, where you can, whether they're internet facing or they're just within your network, let's say, but they haven't gone back to the legacy APIs and spun them down now that they're no longer needed. So there have been cases in the past few years where companies have been exposed, and it goes back to, oh yeah, we had this legacy API, wasn't inventoried properly, and it was never, turned down, monitored, whatever else. So, it's important as we're building new technology, of course, to configure things properly. But if you still have the old stuff up and running, that could be your most vulnerable spot, right? And threat actors will take the time to find those legacy APIs and test them. We also see sometimes key exposures, right? So are there API keys that are, in files and in with it like easily or publicly available files in your code that have just not been cleaned up for whatever reason, and the threat actor can obviously use that time and time again to exploit you. And then, what do the backend APIs look like? So how are APIs talking to each other internally within your network? People spend a lot of time protecting the internet-facing ones for obvious reasons, but you don't want a situation where you're so focused on perimeter defense, but inevitably a threat actor gets in, and then the network is flat from there, right? So just some other things to consider in terms of misconfigurations and challenges that companies can run into. All right, time is flying, as Eloise mentioned, so we'll move on to our last question for the day. And of course, you can always message, we're all on LinkedIn, so you can message us with your questions if we don't have time to get to your specific one. So we'll end off with this one. As bots get smarter and automation platforms get more powerful, what threats are on your radar for next year? What is your call to action for all of our listeners? So Eloise, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think it's that ongoing rise of adaptive bots. We've kind of said it a few times here, where we're seeing bots that just don't follow the script anymore. They're adjusting their behavior in real time based on how your platform responds, like learning as they go, makes those traditional defenses somewhat useless. And then I think on the business side, Rida, I think you referred to business logic abuse, and especially that's definitely one I think to keep eyes on, especially as companies expose APIs directly tied to things like revenue, pricing, customer engagement workflows. They're getting creative about gaming systems in ways that don't technically break anything, but still cause real financial and reputational damage. So I guess if there's one thing I'd encourage teams to think about heading into the next year, it's this. Don't just defend the technology, defend the intent. And I think you definitely alluded to that as well, Rachel. Start mapping out not just like your API endpoints, but also your critical business processes, the assumptions behind them. Ask the questions, what's normal intent here? What would abuse of this flow really look like? And then build your detection models and defenses around that context, because that is where the smartest attacks are probably heading.
Completely agree. All right, Rida, over to you for the last word of the day.
Thank you. So I would say I completely agree with what Eloise mentioned. We'll just, as we have only 2 minutes, just 5 things I will say the teams can do to mitigate this. First, important is we need to log everything. We need to store the full request, even the response data also. So you cannot catch if you didn't log it. And intent scoring is like, don't look on one IP, but also score the full session, see what happens before and after the request. And most importantly, you need to run cross team simulation, simulate a bot attack every quarter and see that how fast your teams can detect and recover. And secure your automation pipelines. Also, I'm seeing a lot, like we need to scan all the scripts also before we deploy into the production. I think we are almost on the time. Rachel, if you have a few lines to share, please go ahead.
Sure. I'll just end on this note where, the issues that are facing, I'd say 99% of our companies are not these like sexy new ways to exploit APIs. I think it's a lot of what we've been talking about with the legacy stuff, credential stuffing. It's us, having basic vulnerabilities and misconfigurations. So, if you want to protect your APIs, go after the low-hanging fruit first before you start onboarding all these new tools and processes, right? Which, if a simple, old API that is still connected to your internal network and still internet facing can be used to enumerate customer data, then building or buying $1 million tools to sit in front of your other APIs is not gonna outweigh the benefit of going after that low hanging fruit. So just something to think about, and we'll end it here. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure being on the panel with the two of you, and we'll chat again soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.